The Shadow of Doubt, written by Jordan Peele, Monkey Paw Productions. Rafaela hurried towards the elevator, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. She could feel the weight of the day pressing down on her shoulders, each step a reminder of the hours she had spent hunched over her desk. It was late, far later than she preferred to be leaving the office. The corridors were eerily silent, the usual hustle and bustle of the day replaced by an unsettling stillness. Overtime had become a painful necessity recently. Deadlines loomed like dark clouds, and the pressure to perform was relentless. She had lost count of the number of nights she had stayed back, the office becoming a second home. She just wanted to be home. The thought of her cozy apartment with its warm lights and soft blankets was the only thing keeping her going. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing her inside the empty metal box. The familiar hum of the machinery was oddly comforting, a sign that she was one step closer to leaving the office behind. Rafaela pressed the button for the ground floor, her finger lingering for a moment on the cool metal. She closed her eyes, allowing herself a brief moment of respite. A small sigh escaped her lips. The day had been long and grueling, and she was more than ready to put it behind her. Only then did she notice him. Her eyes snapped open, her heart skipping a beat. He stood in the far corner, facing away. His presence was almost ghostly, a shadow among shadows. His form was obscured by the flickering fluorescent light above. The intermittent flashes cast eerie shadows, making it hard to discern his features. For a moment, Rafaela questioned if he was real at all. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. Perhaps it was just her tired mind playing tricks. She had been working so hard, pushing herself to the limit. It wouldn't be the first time exhaustion had blurred the lines between reality and imagination, but deep down, a tremor of unease began to stir within her. The rational part of her brain told her it was nothing, just a figment of her imagination. Yet the primal instinct, the one that had kept humans safe for millennia, screamed at her to be wary. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. A glimmer in the dark. Rafaela shifted her weight, trying to get a better look at the figure. He remained perfectly still. His stillness was unnerving. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The air in the elevator seemed to grow colder, heavier. It pressed down on her chest, stealing her breath. The elevator lurched into motion. Rafaela's heart jumped into her throat. Her eyes darted to the control panel. The floor indicator remained stubbornly dark. Fear, sharp and cold, began to grip her. She was trapped. An uneasy silence. "Excuse me?" Rafaela's voice was barely a whisper, trembling with uncertainty. Her attempt to break the silence only seemed to amplify it. The stranger didn't move, his presence looming like a shadow. He didn't even acknowledge her presence, his eyes fixed on the elevator doors as if she didn't exist. It was as if she were completely invisible to him, a ghost in the confined space. The elevator continued its ascent, the silence growing heavier with each passing moment. Rafaela's thoughts raced. Who was this man? What was he doing here? Why wouldn't he answer her? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more unsettling than the last. Her mind conjured up images from late-night horror films, scenes of terror and suspense, stories of disappearances, of things that lurked in the shadows waiting to pounce. Stories she had always dismissed as fiction, mere figments of an overactive imagination. Now they felt terrifyingly real. The air was thick with tension, each second stretching into an eternity. Rafaela's heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of fear. She glanced at the stranger again, hoping for some sign of humanity, but his expression remained blank, unreadable. The elevator's hum was the only sound, a monotonous drone that seemed to echo her growing dread. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, but the unease was overwhelming. What if the stories were true? What if she was about to become one of those tales of horror? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. She had to do something, anything to break this oppressive silence. A floor too far. The elevator shuddered to a halt, the doors remained closed, trapping Rafaela in a metal box suspended in the air. Rafaela's eyes darted to the control panel once more, her heart pounding in her chest. The illuminated number wasn't hers. It was a floor she had never seen before. It wasn't even a floor that existed in the building. Panic swelled within her, a cold sweat breaking out on her forehead. She was trapped, alone with a stranger who wouldn't even acknowledge her existence. The air felt thick with tension. "This isn't my floor," Rafaela stammered, her voice trembling. "There's been a mistake." The figure finally moved, breaking the eerie stillness. He slowly turned his head, his movements deliberate and unsettling. In the dim light, Rafaela could make out a sliver of his face. His expression was unreadable, adding to her growing fear. His eyes, dark and empty, seemed to bore into her very soul. They were devoid of any warmth or humanity, sending chills down her spine. Desperately she pressed the emergency button, hoping for a response, but the silence was deafening. The control panel remained unresponsive, the lights flickering ominously. Rafaela's mind raced, searching for a way out, but every option seemed impossible. The stranger took a step closer, his presence overwhelming and suffocating. She backed away, her fear escalating with each passing second. Suddenly the elevator doors creaked open, revealing a dark, unfamiliar corridor. Rafaela hesitated, unsure if stepping out was the right choice. The corridor stretched out before her, dimly lit and foreboding, as if it led to another world. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself and stepped out, determined to find a way back to safety. The elevator doors closed behind her with a final echoing thud, leaving her alone in the unknown. "This is my floor," the stranger whispered. His voice was a raspy, hollow sound. It seemed to slither around the confined space, wrapping around Rafaela like icy fingers. Terror, pure and consuming, washed over her. She fumbled for the emergency button, her fingers shaking uncontrollably. He was close now, too close. Rafaela could feel his cold, stale breath on her skin. The smell of damp earth and decay filled her nostrils. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing herself for the worst. The elevator lurched again, this time descending with terrifying speed. Rafaela's stomach lurched into her throat. She couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. The stranger's laughter, a low, guttural sound, echoed around her. It was the sound of madness, of something truly evil. The lights flickered violently, plunging the elevator into darkness. Rafaela cried out, her voice swallowed by the abyss. She was falling, plummeting into the unknown, and then silence. The next morning, the elevator remained out of service. A repair crew worked tirelessly, but the cause of the malfunction remained a mystery. Rafaela was gone, vanished without a trace. Security footage showed her entering the elevator, but she never emerged. The footage ended abruptly, as if the elevator itself had simply ceased to exist. The police investigated, but their efforts proved fruitless. Rafaela's disappearance remained an unsolvable puzzle, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are best left buried. The story of Rafaela and the mysterious elevator became a chilling legend, whispered amongst the employees of the building. Some dismissed it as a tragic accident, others as a fabrication meant to scare newcomers. But those who had been there that night, those who had felt the building's oppressive atmosphere, knew the truth. They knew that some things defied explanation. They knew that within the walls of that building, within the very fabric of reality itself, there existed a darkness far older and far more terrifying than they could possibly comprehend. The elevator was eventually repaired, but it was never the same. Employees avoided it whenever possible, opting for the stairs even if it meant a longer climb. The air inside always felt colder, the silence heavier. And sometimes, late at night when the building was empty, One could swear they heard a faint whisper echoing from the depths of the elevator shaft. A whisper that sent shivers down their spines and reminded them of the fate of Rafaela, the woman who had stepped into an elevator and vanished without a trace.